You ever think about quitting?
It's the combat of life hammering the snot out of you.
Well, stand by, dig in deep, and get ready to get fired up with us.
Welcome to the Team Never Quit podcast, the #1 podcast that inspires you to fight on. I'm your host, David Rutherford, here with Mr. Never Quit himself, Marcus Luttrell.
Our mission is to help you embrace the suck of life, to teach you the values of working your ass off, and to interview the most hard-charging people on planet Earth.
We know life is hard. It's time for you to suck it up, Buttercup, and let us teach you to persevere in every environment imaginable by sharing real-world lessons learned by those who never quit. That's right. It's time, Marcus, for us to help them defeat the negative insurgency in their lives.
You fire me up. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's roll.
Let's roll. Marcus, heaviest day in American history.
9/11.
For sure. Right? Wizard?
Pearl Harbor.
I wasn't around for Pearl Harbor.
No, you can get perspective.
Yeah,
you can do.
I'd have to go, wow, man.
I don't
tough,
know.
dude.
Which impacted the national consciousness more? Probably 9/11. We've been at war for 16 years.
That's my point. Other than that, the shot at the North Bridge, that lasted quite
Pearl
a while.
Harbor, we got a chance to fight. You know,
I honestly don't know. I think we'd have to ask someone who lived through both events. Which was more shocking?
Pearl Harbor or 9/11?
The JFK assassination was heavy, right?
Yeah, but there was no warfare that came out of it. That's my point. Man, this date, September 11th, 2001, has launched the longest engagement in United States history in a fight that still has no end in sight to it.
Unfortunately not.
So the power and the magnitude of that
Well,
day.
you look at it like that, it's metastasizing here. It's here.
Heck, just today,
Yeah, I mean,
some knucklehead in the New York City subway system decides wants to blow people up with a pipe bomb. Now, thank God he blew himself up, which is awesome.
Yeah. I love
There's
that kind of karma.
the idea is that there's bad people in this world trying to do our country harm on a regular, reoccurring basis. And the threat now, because of the way society is and the way the laws are, right, that makes it available for people to wage war in a bunch of different ways nowadays. And I think, what's so remarkable is about our guest coming on, about Bernie, is his perspective from growing, the way he grew up, to becoming the police commissioner of New York City on 9/11, to working overseas in the fight against terrorism in Iraq, to being incarcerated himself, and now trying to renovate the judicial system. I mean, that's this guy, bro.
I mean, he was one of the generals in that war zone. That was a battle. Once they shut that city down, it was contained in there. No one knew what was going on, and
Do you remember that day?
of course, on my way to work. Well, we were at the house at the condo. I was at school. I was in STV school.
Yeah.
They recalled us, and then while we were sitting in there, and the master chief was saying there was pretty good. You could hear the hustle, and everybody was fired. The master chief, everybody was fired up like, "Hey boys, get ready, we're going."
Yeah.
And then we were watching the TVs in the jock, all the TVs on the thing, and it had that, and that was crazy, man. That second plane came around, smacked it. Warrant leaned his head, and he's like, "We're going."
It's on. Yeah, I was doing a dive soup course in Sandog, and I remember I got a phone call at like 6 something, and like, "Hey, Rut, turn on the TV, man." I was like, and we didn't have a TV at the time. And it's a funny story to it, but I'm not going to tell here because it's obviously a pretty somber moment. So we ended up taking me 5 hours to get into class, and we didn't stop training, man. We literally, at a break for 10 minutes, we'd flip it on, and then the next plane had hit, and then turn it off, then the next, then one building to fall. Man, but we kept going. But the surreal moment for me was that Friday, we finished half day, drove out to Nyland. That Saturday was IADS. First day of IADS for the SQT class we had out there. And I usually give the rah-rah speech and all that before we start. And this time I was just like, all right, gents, guess what? It's real now. And look around, because there's probably some of you, that aren't going to be around here in a few years. And it was sketchy, because some of the dudes in that class are no longer with us.
Sure. Well, just think about that. Once the fighting got real good and going in Afghanistan, Iraq jumped off. So the frogs weren't going there. There's another playground. I mean, training for Afghanistan the whole time, then all of a sudden change to you're going to Iraq. How's that? All right.
Wizard, what was it like for you? Because you weren't in the service at that time, right?
No, I was working as a mechanic in Nashville.
What was tell us about that? That's a good perspective.
I think I didn't have an understanding of what the gravity of that really was. Obviously, it was a major event, and I won't forget. It leaves an impact on where you are and what you did, but to the level that I understand what that means, what its future impact would be compared to the understanding I have now, it's absolutely night and day.
Wow.
I wasn't in the Navy for another year and a half after that.
Wow. Now,
that's gotta be a crazy. I mean, that's a good point. You joined up knowing you were going into a war. It jumped off while we were training for it.
Yeah.
That feeling, you're like, ugh.
Oh, totally. I mean, it was a shift. Mm-hmm. I mean, there was a cataclysmic shift in our community about, all right, no longer fit isn't the main mission anymore.
It wasn't an if, it was when.
Is when.
That was our war.
Yeah.
As soon as they started saying that.
Yeah, it was on. Well, the guy, let's before we bring him on, Wizard, please. When Bernie sent his bio to me the first time and I read it, he says, here's a short bio.
Yeah, I'm going to do the rundown on his bio, but this has been chopped, significantly down, but it's still unbelievable. And we're only focusing on the 9/11 aspects of this. His career spans 30 years in law enforcement, and it's far beyond just what happened on 9/11. So Bernard Kerik, 62, he's from Newark, New Jersey. At the age of 3, he was abandoned by his mother, who was subsequently beaten to death when he was 9 years old. He was a high school dropout, later volunteered for the Army, where he earned his GED. He was an MP in Korea and did some other things in the Army, got out of there. Eventually, 1986, he starts working for the New York City Police Department. After working on the street for a while, gets assigned to the Narcotics Division, major case unit. In 91, with them, he transfers over to the U.S. Department of Justice's New York Drug Enforcement Task Force, which was responsible for overseeing some of the most far-reaching drug investigations in New York City at the time. His career was rather meteoric. In 1994, he becomes the first deputy and then later the commissioner of New York City's Department of Correction, where the most notable thing he did was oversee the jail system, including Rikers Island, which was known as probably one of the most violent incarceration units in the country. And under his command, they did a lot of changes to their system and their policies, achieving some historic reductions, 93% in inmate violence. This received a lot of international recognition, and that comes into play later in the story here. 2000, he becomes the 40th police commissioner of New York City. And of course, he is on duty in that position during 9/11, oversees the rescue, recovery, investigation of that massive event. 2003, he's appointed by the Bush administration as the interim minister of Iraq. In 2004, Bush again nominates him to be Secretary of Homeland Security, and this becomes the beginning of a downward spiral for him, which creates an incredible dichotomy in the arc of his career. He has to withdraw his name because of course, in these congressional inquiries into people's past history, the political opponents will dig up anything they can find. He employed a nanny for his children who was an illegal, paid under the table for that. These things came out. Eventually, this all accumulates into him pleading guilty to 8 counts of false statements and tax charges, and he goes to prison for 3 years.
Ouch!
So the being in charge of the prison system in New York City, as well as being the police commissioner, he goes all the way to being a federal felon.
Dude, we could do a whole show just reading his bio, bro.
Yeah, I know. I haven't got into his honorary degrees, the books he's written, et cetera, et cetera. Basically, over his 30 year career in criminal justice. He's one of the most decorated police commissioners. This guy is.
You know what my favorite
ultra
is,
impressive.
Marcus? He's in the Centurion Black Belt Hall of Fame.
That's awesome.
Dude, he's a 5th degree master instructor in Korean and Japanese karate. So not only is a kid from the streets of New York, the commissioner jail, he's a convict himself, but he will roundhouse kick you in your head, dude. I love that about this guy. I love Bernie. Well, what do you think, man? Let's get this guy on here and let's hear how absolutely spectacular his never quit story or stories are, gents. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm curious what he's going to say.
All right. Marcus, and there are a few human beings on this planet who actually understand the term America, right? The people that live it in their bones. It feeds through their veins like a whole new kind of blood. A blood that just oozes red, white, and blue. The man that's here, he gets it to the core. Would you agree with me?
Absolutely. There's a couple of career paths you can follow in this country from start to finish, and they give you opportunities to get in situations that you can't get in any other profession. And he walked in one of them and then had the opportunity to prove himself.
Well, I mean, we read his resume, and my mind is still flipped out. But let's stop beleaguering the point and bring him on, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. I'd like to welcome to the show Mr. Bernard B. Kerik. Sir, welcome to the Team Never Quit podcast.
Thank you, guys.
It's just such an honor. We had the distinct pleasure to meet a couple months ago at the Journey Home Project. Charlie Daniels, great charity out there. And I just got to say, getting to have dinner with you the night before was one of the most thrilling times of my whole life. And the fact that you're here to share your story, your greatest never quit story or stories with our audience is just a true honor. We really appreciate it, sir.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to jump right into what we call the Mad Minute. We're going to loosen up our neurofibers or little neuroplasticity. We're going to develop some rapport. So are you ready? Are you ready for the Mad Minute, sir?
All right, run it.
All right, ready? Marcus, shoot.
All right, sir, what was your first car?
My first car was a Corvair. I think I paid about $100 for it. A white Corvair. It lasted for about a week.
Because someone gave you lemon, didn't they?
Hey, $100. What do you want?
All right, Wizard.
Let's have one day that you would like to go back and relive again, or moment. Day or moment you'd like to go back and relive again.
I think the day I became New York City Police Commissioner. One of the greatest days of my life, taking over the NYPD.
Wow. I mean, that's pretty awesome. That's a big day. All right.
Incredible
all right.
responsibility.
If you could give truth serum to any president in history, who would it be and what would you ask him?
I think it would be President Obama. I'd ask him about Benghazi. I'd ask him about Fast and Furious. I'd ask him about a whole bunch of things, but I think those are two of the top ones.
Oh, that's awesome. I know our buddy Tonto would love that answer for sure. All right,
Yeah, right.
Marcus, shoot.
Okay, would you rather be at complete peace or know the answer to every question?
You know what? Complete peace. It's never going to happen, but you could always try, I guess.
You can always pray, right? That's what I did.
Yeah.
All right, Wizard, shoot.
All right, we asked this question to a lot of people, but it just never gets old. If you could go back in history and spend, let's say, 2 weeks with any individual, who would that be?
You know what, guys? I've worked with some and for some of the greatest people in history. I think it's a group of guys I started out with in Saudi Arabia, came out of the Special Forces group at Fort Bragg. They were my mentors. They were the guys that taught me sort of how to be a man. Those were the guys I would go back to.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I'll tell you what, some of the greatest dudes I've ever worked with are Green Berets, man. My hat always comes off to those guys.
Yeah, both Rhett and I did I was at Bragg too I'm an 18 Delta, a bastard in the SEAL teams, man, and it was a great time being over there. And I'm still buddies with the guys that we linked up with going through that training.
That's awesome, dude. All right, here you go. If you had to get into a fist fight with one of them, who would it be? Sylvester Stallone or Arnold Schwarzenegger?
If I had to get in a fist fight with them?
Yep.
Against them?
Yep.
I have to be Arnold. I have to be Arnold. You know, those, especially the guys in the SEALs, those big guys, they may be strong, but a lot of times they just don't have it.
Isn't that the truth?
Stallone's my man. I couldn't go against him anyway. We've been friends for about 20 years, but he's my man. I couldn't do it.
And that's why I asked you, because I know you're buddies with him.
Yeah, he can scrap. He's a boxer. He can
Absolutely. All right, Marcus, last question. Go, brother.
All right, favorite superhero?
Favorite superhero? You know what? I take it back to, the 1950s, Superman.
Yes, thank you, sir. We're so few and far between nowadays with all the movies and all that stuff. Thank God for us that are still holding hard on the old school. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Again, I want to say, hey, thank you. There was a suicide attack today in New York City. I know you are under the gun to provide really critical insight for the country via a bunch of news sources. So again, we really appreciate your time today, sir. So let's jump right into this. The reason why people come to the TNQ podcast is to find some semblance of grit, some semblance of perseverance, stories that can inspire them to dig in and really face the hardships of life. So, sir, without further ado, would you please share your greatest never quit story or stories with our listeners?
You know what, guys, I think the greatest story, not only my story, it's a story of thousands of New York City first responders. When you think of never quit, it's the story of 9/11.
Amen.
I was the police commissioner on September 11th. When the first plane hit Tower 1, I was actually in my office. When the second plane slammed into Tower 2, I was standing underneath and in front of the building.
Oh, my God.
I would, the debris, the plane, the building showered down on me and my staff. But over the next several hours, I was in command of a group of men and women that honestly affected the greatest rescue mission in the history of our country, where they took 20 to 25,000 people out of those buildings, and they evacuated hundreds of thousands of people out of southern Manhattan into the Bronx, Queens, Staten, into Jersey, taking over boats on the harbor, getting them over into the Jersey Bay. When you think of never quitting, that was a day that we looked at it in New York City like it was the end of the world because of the enormity of the attack. 18 square acres of a crime scene. We lost 1,700 civilians. I lost 23 guys that worked for me. The Port Authority cops lost 37. The fire department lost 343. And every one of those men and women that responded that died, they knew the perils inherent with that attack, the destruction that was there, the devastation that was there, but they still went into those buildings. They didn't stop, even after, when you think of never quitting, they were ordered to evacuate. Many of these guys heard the evacuation order and stayed in the buildings and kept going up into the buildings looking for people that they could take out because they knew they were there.
Wow.
So I don't think there's a better example of never quitting in this country than that.
I agree with you. I mean, I remember when it happened. We talked about it once or twice on the show, and the surge of patriotism, the surge of knowing that finally. It was almost inspiring, and I don't, that's a little counterintuitive when you talk about tragedy to be inspired by it. But I remember, Marcus, and you can share your time or Wizard, but when those buildings hit on the way into work, it took me 5 hours to get into work, but feeling like finally we're going to go after the people that did it. I can't imagine what it was like in the midst of it, as it was the fires. Can you just describe when you got the first call and what was going through your mind and what led up to you getting over to the towers?
When the first plane hit, I just finished working out in my office, and my chief of staff came in and said a plane had just hit Tower 1, and I assumed, as probably everybody else did, that it was a small plane, one of these Cessnas that fly up and down the Hudson River. And I went into my conference room, looked out the window, and I could see the towers about a half a mile away. I could see the damage and the destruction to the building. When I got down there, we couldn't turn into that block, Vesey Street, because the people were jumping from the building and they were landing on Vesey. They were landing in the courtyard between Tower 1 and Tower 2. So we had to back the vehicles up and wait for the mayor there. I had called for a temporary command bus to be put on the corner of Barclay and West Broadway. And while I was waiting for the mayor, the second plane slammed through the north side of the tower. And it was at that point that I realized we were under attack.
Wow. Now, I know there's been a lot of stories done, but, I don't know if there's too many people that can really surmise it the way you can, being that you were right there on the ground. But, when you think about and it goes back to that question of that Marcus asked, we do it in jest, but this is the truest question you can ask, peace or answers. Those people that were facing, 3,000 degree burns, or to end their life consciously, to get away and to make a decision to die in that capacity. How overwhelming was that to see?
You know what, Dave, and I think you guys would get this, being that the jobs you've had. Quite often in the jobs we've had, there's not too often that you look at something and you feel that it's completely, there's nothing you could do. You're completely defenseless. Look at Marcus's circumstance. That's a circumstance where, a lot of people would look at it and say, there's no surviving in this, and yet he got through it. I have to tell you, there were times in those first several minutes, I watched, dozens. I know you guys may have seen it on TV. You saw bodies drop, 1, 2 at a time. I saw 2, 3 at a time. Dozens of people jump to their death, and there wasn't a damn thing I could do about it. You were completely, there was nothing you could do. You couldn't yell up to them and tell them, stop, wait. We're going to get you help. Don't do that sitting in an inferno. And they had a choice, to just burn alive or take the jump. And many of them, far more than anybody saw or was able to see on TV, many of them took that jump.
Wow.
Well, that was the one thing that I think was unique about 9/11 and every other war that we've been in. When the first plane hit, there was enough time in between for all of us to tune in to see what was just going on the news. And I say this to a lot of people sometimes, man, movies do a great job. And even watching it through TV, we were all there with y'all. But the one things New Yorkers have that we don't is the smell. Right? There's certain things that go down in a situation, especially when it's getting real bad and things are catching on fire. So the heat from that flame, we couldn't feel that through the TV. The smell and those subtle screams that you can't hear over all that, or at echo. And when you're saying the first thing you do when everything falls apart, and this comes with experience, is you stop and you look, you assess, right? We have a saying in the teams, you don't run to your death. Well, in order to see the gravity of what you're about to walk into, you got to take a step back, and there was no way you could do that in that situation. And what happens when you start getting hit and they start hitting you and hitting you and hitting you? What New York City did when all the training was gone, it went on to that, your love for your countrymen.
Hey,
I can't stop coming back up here. There's one more up there, right?
Right.
And man, that was a hell of a day.
You know what, Marcus? And this goes to what you're saying and what Dave said a minute ago about, patriotism and how the New Yorkers united and came together. What I'm going to tell you is a true story, and not too many people know it. But and everybody saw the president. President Bush came on September 14th. He came down to ground zero. He stood up on the pile with the bullhorn next to the retired firemen. He spoke to the men and women there. He inspired them. He motivated basically a nation. And when he came down off that pile, he came back to a Suburban and he told us to get in. Now, this is the president's Suburban. In the back of the Suburban, and there's 4 seats. But there were 6 of us in total with the president, and he basically told all of us to get in. So we all jump in the back of the Suburban. We're kind of sitting on top of him. Rudy's, the Mayor Giuliani's leg is over his, and we're a tight bunch. We get in the Suburban. We're going up the West Side Highway, and we're going to the Javits Center to see the victims' families, the cops and the firemen that were missing at the time. The president was going to speak to their families. And as we were going up the West Side Highway, the president looked out the window and he said, "Oh my God, look at this support. Look at these New Yorkers. Look at this unity." And they had signs, "God bless America. Go get him, George Bush. George Bush is the best," and all this stuff. And Rudy Giuliani looks over at the president and he said, "Mr. President," he says, "I hate to be the one to tell you this. We're on the west side of Manhattan. Not one of those people voted for you." And everybody laughed. Everybody started laughing. And the governor started laughing. And Rudy looked at the governor, Governor Pataki, and he said, "Governor, none of them voted for you neither." And the bottom line is, it was true. This is New York City is a big Democratic city. Lots of liberals in New York City. But on that day, and I often wonder, where are those people now that was out there then that wanted to go get the enemy, that wanted the people held responsible that did this? Where are they today? Because today they run and hide, should you mention going after radical Islam or anything else. But on that day and the days after, it was a united city for sure.
Let's turn back to the moment itself and really talk about you as an individual and the decisions that you had to make. Not just, when you say the decisions, the thousands of decisions that were coming at you like a belt-fed machine gun. Walk us through some of that and managing that stress, making life and death decisions for your troops, for your team, and for the city. What was that like, and how long did it last before you finally were like, I got to close my eyes for a second?
Yeah, just to add to that, because here's the deal. Is like you got catapulted into that never quit story right then. You didn't even have a chance to fight, get beat down, and then lose and come back from it. You started in it. You know what I'm talking about?
You know what, Marcus, that's a really good point, because we've seen, man-made disasters in this country. We've seen, natural disasters. A lot of times, most times, you have some sort of warning this is coming. On September 11th of 2001, I had no warning this was coming until the first plane hit Tower 1, and then we thought it was an accident. I didn't know until 9:02 that morning that this was an attack on America. So the benefit to us, and this goes back to whether it's first responders in New York City and the fire department or police department, or Navy SEALs, special operations, special forces guys, you know what? It's all about planning, preparation, practice, training. We had planning and protocols in place that if there's an event like this, we never planned for somebody to hit those towers, but we had planned and practiced for everything under the sun, every disaster you can imagine. So when the second plane hit Tower 2 and we realized we were under attack, there was a response called Operation Omega. And Operation Omega was basically you close down the entire city. It's the first time, if you can go back and if you reflect on that day, you'll see signs. New York City closed. It was the first time I think it ever happened. I ordered the closing of New York City. The only people that could get into the city were first responders. No movement on the highways. We then had the response from every single precinct. There's 76 precincts in New York City, 76 individual police stations around the city. There was a response from every single police station. There was a response from every single firehouse. The entire New York City Correction Department, we had 13,000 correction officers overseeing Rikers Island, which I ran before I ran the NYPD. We took all of their spare correction officers, got them into the city.
Wow.
And then every city agency was merged into one under the umbrella of the Office of Emergency Management to respond to the crisis. And from that point on, it was all about, handling the disaster, responding to the disaster. So you had the response, the rescue efforts, which really, honestly, and unfortunately, turned out to be not much because there was nothing that survived. You had the rescue efforts, you had the investigation, and then the aftermath of the cleanup and debris. And to give you an idea of how enormous this thing was, think of 24 hours a day for 7 months, around the clock, one truck after another going into the debris zone of the World Trade Center, removing debris into Staten Island, where every bit of that stuff was sifted through like a fine-tooth comb, right down to the point that we found wedding rings, we found medallions, religious medallions, you name it. All of that stuff had to be gone through.
I mean, as meticulous as sifting for gold, right? That's what
literally. Well, it's the gold of people's memory.
That's what I'm talking about.
The gold of people's
trying
memory.
to find our people do that. You're going to comb through every section of it.
You know what, Marcus? That's exactly right. And so many loved ones were identified by those small things. Because keep in mind, guys, I had 23 people that worked for me. And honestly, as hard as this sounds, if you could see this cup, I could have given back many of them to their families in this cup. They were disintegrated, they vaporized. The first 2 cops we found, they had been apparently standing next to each other. We found the metal pieces from their Glock. We found their shield pins. We found whatever metal was on their belts. But think of a uniform that you guys wear, that the military and the cops wear. No vest, no uniform, no leather belts, no shoes, no boots, no nothing.
Wow.
Except for the metal that was on their body. That's what we had to deal with.
That's great. I know during our deal when the helo got shot down, that same thing. But everybody got back something, even if it was a dog tag. That was left.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Well, I want to just go back to the question and say, in that space, one, how long did you go before you shut your eyes to get a break? And what was the driving thing in your mind and your psyche that kept you going?
I think I got back to my office. By the time I got back to my office late that night, we had set up camp in the building. So guys had gone up to my apartment in the Bronx, took a bunch of my clothes, my BDUs and everything else. So my office looked like a barracks by the time I got back there about 2:30 in the morning. I actually laid down on a couch in the back of my office around 2:33 a.m., but I could not sleep because the F-16s, F-15s were flying overhead up and down the East River, and every damn time I heard a plane, I would sit up and I'm thinking, what is that? What is that noise?
Wow.
I've gotten an hour or two of sleep. I met the mayor back in the police academy where we had set up shop. I met him there about 5 or 6 in the morning. Didn't get much sleep that night. I didn't actually get out of the building, get back home for about 3 weeks.
Oh my gosh!
So we were pretty busy. These were 18 to 20-hour days. Look, we're dealing with the rescue and recovery, but I also had 23 people that worked for me. Many of them I knew. That evening, on September 11th, around 5:30 that night, I had to go back to the auditorium. They had flown them in helicopters from all over the city, brought them into headquarters. So I had the 23 families in headquarters. I had to walk in and speak to them and talk to them. And when you think, Dave, when you talk about what inspires you to get through this, and I am confident that for you guys, it's exactly the same thing that it was for me. When I walked in that auditorium, there was a a retired firefighter in New York City. His name was John Vigiano. John Vigiano had two sons. Joseph Vigiano worked for me, and he had a fireman, a son named John Vigiano, worked in the fire department. Both his sons were missing.
Oh, no.
Both were missing. Joe Vigiano was a real heroic guy in the NYPD. He was assigned to emergency service, had been involved in 2 gun battles over a 5-year period, shot 5 times between the 2 gun battles, and still came back to work, would not retire, wound up dying in the World Trade Center. But his father, John Vigiano, was probably one of my greatest inspirations.
Wow.
You know, this is a guy that sat in that auditorium. He said, Commissioner, I understand what's going on. I've been there. All I'm asking is that you do your best, and we're going to be there to support you. He's going to be there to support me. His kids were missing. And that's the kind of thing, those kinds of things. You're there to back the men and women that work for you, and you're there really to fight for the men and women that aren't there anymore.
Amen to that.
Well, as soon as you shut that city down, you guys went on deployment. You don't come home from that. And what you were saying is kind of relative to ours. I mean, you train for it, and then once you deploy, once you flip that switch, it's not off till you come back home. And since you don't go back home, you're in the mindset. I like to say this, you don't stop being a fireman when you make a bad fire, or a cop when you make a bad call, but you can't stop being what you are. And the one thing I've learned about New York City, and this is the greatest part about our country, because it's one of the oldest cities, especially in the firefighter group, and it's that legacy, right? The passed down from grandfather to father to son. And what that tells you is, even when the kids are coming up and they say they want to go be a doctor, like, you can go be a doctor, you'll probably be great at it. But there's a lot of legacies in this family that'll tell you right now that we are designed to be firefighters, and we're great at it. And when you get them guys, it's, you know, some of those families, you just hear their names just synonymous for getting after it. Yeah.
You know what, Marcus? It's funny you say that, because my son is a cop in the Newark Police Department. He's on the Newark SWAT. He knows a bunch of guys, you know. He trains with a bunch of the SEALs, SF guys down at Bragg. He's been on the job for 13 years. He's now assigned to the FBI Terrorist Task Force in Newark, in the Newark Field Division. But when he got out of high school, and much like most New York City cops or other cops on the job, you want your kids to do better than you. So what do? You know, I send them off to St. John's. I want him to go to, you know, get his degree and go to law school. You know, that worked for about a week. You know, he came back by the end of his first school year and said, Dad, I hate school. I want to go on a job. And, you know, one thing led to another. Now he's been on the job. He's 32 years old. He's been on 13 years already. And he's doing quite well. But, you know, in the NYPD, I've had great-grandfathers, grandfathers, fathers, and sons.
Wow.
All on the job within about 5 years of each other. So it's a crazy legacy.
Sir, where did it start for you? I mean, obviously you have had a life of serving, man. When and where did not only that start, but your never quit attitude? When did you start learning that too?
You know, well, my never quit attitude, you know, I was born in a pretty humble, you know, from pretty humble beginnings. I don't know if you know this, my mother was murdered when I was 9. I was abandoned when I was 3 years old. I went to Eastside High in Paterson, New Jersey, which was it was famous. It became famous in a major motion picture with Morgan Freeman, you know, called Lean on Me.
Lean on
Awesome.
Me.
I was one of those 25 little white kids that ran around the school acting like a maniac. You know, I got involved in the martial arts when I was about 13. I got my black belt when I was 16, but it was the military. The next year, when I went in the service, I joined the Army. I went in the MPs. It was the military and my martial arts background that set me off in a position where, you know, I would take off from there. And it was, you know, when I got in the military, it was a niche that I thought, you know, I like this. I like the uniformity. I like the discipline. I like the respect. I'm extremely patriotic. My father was in the Marine Corps. He was a big patriot. That's what started me. And then one of my first jobs out of the military, I wound up going to Saudi Arabia. I lived in Saudi Arabia for about 2.5 years, and all of the guys that I worked with came out of Bragg.
Wow.
Came out of the SF groups of Bragg. So I was surrounded by this group of, dynamic, battle-tested warriors, dating back to coming out of Vietnam in the SF time, that was around me and sort of acted as my secondary fathers. So they didn't let me mess up, and, I took it from there.
How critical is it in our darkest times to have those battle-tested people around us, those people who truly understand the never quit mindset when maybe we're struggling? How critical is it? We talk about it a lot. How critical is it?
You know what, Dave? I think there's two things. One, it's that mindset of people. It's that core group of men and women in this country that know what patriotism is. They know how to motivate and inspire others. But I got to tell you guys, the one thing that disappoints me extremely in this country right now is parenting.
Wow.
We have cities in this country that are just dropping off the face of the earth because these kids don't have parents. I think parenting is a big issue that has to be dealt with, and I think parents should be held more accountable for the kids' actions. I can remember, where I grew up, if a cop told me get off the corner and, I didn't move fast enough, he'd slap me in the shins with his nightstick. And if I went upstairs hobbling and told my father that the cop slapped me in the shins with his nightstick because I didn't move fast enough, then my father cracked me and tell me the next time he tells you to move, then you move. That'd be the end of it. Today, that doesn't happen. Today, if that cop, God forbid, he even says something, you got parents, they want to sue the city, they want to sue the cop, they want to, they want the cop's badge and job. And, we're living in a different time. And, I thank God. I just came back from the Army-Navy game the other day. I was there with 9 Line Apparel.
Awesome group.
Hanging out with this fantastic tailgate. And I swear to God, I looked around, thousands of people in that group, and I thought, these are the people that's taking care of their kids. These are the people that's teaching their kids to stand up and salute the flag. These are the people that's telling, their kids in high school and college, you don't take a knee when you're in a football game. But where's the rest of the country? It kills me. It kills me that there's only a core group of people in this country that think like that.
And I think you're spot on there. And one of the interesting things that I really find fascinating about you and where you've taken your incredible life lesson, not only from 9/11, but becoming police commissioner, your meteoric rise to commission. I know you were involved with Mayor Giuliani and some huge transformational cases with the mafia and back in the 90s, and really taken then in post in Iraq and what you've done. But now you're really saying, all right, we have this generation, if you will, that's been lost without good parents, and the penal system is overrun with these kids. What are you doing to take your legacy, to take your experience to help these kids in this space with trying to rehabilitate the justice system?
Well, one of the things, a lot of things people may not know about me. One of the things is in the aftermath, in 2004, I was nominated to take over the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. I had a nanny, a domestic servant that took care of my kids. My wife and I paid her cash. I actually was sent to prison by the United States government. I was sent to prison for 4 years. I served 3 years and 11 days for false statements and tax charges relating to that and a few other things. Look.
That's quite a unique perspective from the guy that ran Rikers Island to being incarcerated. That's huge insight. That's massive.
Well, honestly, David, it's bigger than huge, because at the end of the day, there is no one, not one we got 300 million people in this country. There isn't one person in the country that's run the largest police department and the largest jail system in the nation, and then been inside as a prisoner. So I can tell you it's far more unique than you could imagine, number one. And number two, I think most disturbing for me was that I got to see things that I never saw from the outside. Wow. You know, you think that prison prison is for bad guys that do bad things. Honestly, that's what you would think. And then I went to a federal minimum security camp in Cumberland, Maryland, and I met guys just like us. I met young military guys that falsified a document on their recruitment application that wound up going to prison for 18 months.
What?
I hear, this is a really good one, especially you guys would get this. I had a young Marine. He was, and this is a twofold story. One, what the system can do, but two, more importantly, what it could do to you as a person. We had a kid come into the system. He was going to serve 2 years. He was a young Marine. He was 22 years old. He was a sniper in Iraq. He had a pair of night vision goggles. He bought them on his own. They're his. He purchased them legally. He owned them. He sold the night vision goggles that he bought. He sold them on eBay. Unfortunately for him, he sold them to a guy on eBay that was selling them internationally without the right permit. So when the government locked up that guy, they came back and locked up everybody that sold to him as conspirators. This kid got 24 months for conspiracy to distribute military equipment to overseas. A foreign government. He had nothing to do with it.
That sounds kind of thin.
Nothing to do with it. So here's the deal. He comes into the system. I can promise you, he was a Marine. His inmate work boots gleamed, like jump boots. His prison fatigues were spotless starched. He had a buzz cut Marine haircut. But I'm going to tell you something. 18 months later, the day he was discharged, I was there. He left a thug. His pants were hanging off his behind. He walked around in sandals. His hair was scruffy. He talked all kind of garbage to the staff. In 18 months, we took a United States Marine and we turned him into a monster, into a thug. Is that really what we want going back into society? No. Wow. And I think the justice system does it, the punishment should fit the crime. You take good people that make mistakes and you turn them into convicted felons. It's wrong. You want to do something for society, that part of the system has to change.
Wow, what a campaign.
It seems like, we're still running laws that were applied back in the day that shouldn't even exist anymore. And it seems like people are just anything that has been done can be undone. I mean, we can catch up with the laws. We got guys in prison for the dumbest thing I ever heard of, man. And you're right, it's a gladiator academy. I mean,
you know what, Marcus? Listen, first of all, you need to get the Congress, members of Congress need to do their job and stop being afraid to do their job. Number one, you got guys in prison, serving time in federal prison. You ready? Commercial fishermen caught too many fish.
No.
They caught too many fish. They're sitting in prison for 18 months, 2 years. You got guys that hunted with the wrong ammunition or without the appropriate permit or with the wrong weapon.
No.
They're in federal prison. This is insanity. You know what? Bad guys that do bad things, prison. Some people put in there for life. Some whack them. I don't care what you do to them. They don't belong to be back in society. But when you take good people that make mistakes, people that pay taxes, take care of their kids, go to church and all this other stuff, and then you stick them in prison and you guarantee that for the rest of their life they're going to be a convicted felon and they're never going to get a real job. They can't take care of their family anymore. That's crazy, man. We're dumbing down society.
I mean, you do something, catch too many fish, shooting with wrong. I was like, hey, man, okay, that's a rule. You broke it. We're gonna fine you. Maybe you have to paint the courthouse. When I got in trouble when I was a kid, which was kind of a lot, man. The judge and our lawyer, they got together because they knew us in the community, right?
That's right.
It was kind of tough. So when we would screw up and be mischievous like boys do, man, be like, all right, you paint the courthouse, and we had to do that.
Wow.
And then we paid our dues.
Marcus, you know what? Those people are gone, man. Those people are gone. The people with common sense, the old timers like that, listen, back when my father was young, you got jammed up, you got stupid, you went into a courthouse, judge said, all right, here's the deal. You're going to do a year in jail, or you're going to go down and sign up in the Marine Corps right now.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Okay, I got it. I'm on the way to the recruiter.
Wow.
You know what? And those kids turned out to be good kids. But today, we don't have that. You take a kid into the system today, nobody wants to give anybody a second chance. Prosecutors want a victory.
Right.
They don't want justice.
Numbers.
We said, criminals are a different deal, but if that whole phase when you're 16 to you're, 27 as a guy or a girl, man, how many mistakes? You're supposed to make mistakes. You got to walk and be the man that you're not sometimes to become the man that you are. And in order to know that you have a good life, you got to have some bad times, right? You got to make some mistakes to gain perspective, because 10 years old to 40, it's an opinion. 40 to 60, there's your perspective. And then after that, it's wisdom. And I get the laws, man. We have rules and regulations. We have to live by, man. But experience, people need that. I mean, in order to run a country as dynamic as ours, to evolve as we're supposed to, man, you need risk takers. I'm not talking about criminals. I'm just talking people screw up, man. God dang.
Yeah, listen, today kids are not allowed to be kids. You've got school administrators in this country, and I've seen it in just about every state, they're suspending 6-year-olds because they point their finger like a gun and shoot at somebody. They're suspending those kids for being kids. That's nuts. It's just nuts.
Sure. Well, they mimic what they see on movies, the news. Anytime you turn on television, it's kids.
It is where our society, I think, is moving away from some core key things. Now, we're coming up to the end here, because I know you got to jump off and go on to some other. You got some news sources that really want to get your opinion today based on the attacks. But the last thing I want to ask you, sir, is based on this whole concept of being in very difficult times, whether it's in the times of tragedy or it's up against society changing, what are some ideas that can help our listeners prepare themselves for that kind of insurgency? Whether it's the literal insurgency of the threat that we face, or it's the metaphorical insurgency of a shifting society. How can people formulate the never quit mindset? What are a couple ideas for them?
Well, first of all, the one thing I have a big problem with these days is the news and the media. I have a 17-year-old and a 15-year-old. I try to force into their head, don't believe anything you read, on the internet. Go after the source. Look to make sure the information's valid and accurate. We have a society. We have kids graduating from universities, major Ivy League universities, that are morons. They know nothing about our history. Our history in this country, the country that school is in, they know nothing. And I think that's a bit bizarre. So I think we have to better educate our kids. I think we have to live in a world of reality. I think we have to motivate and inspire others. And when you think of never quitting, don't give up on this country. I mean, people, I've heard so much, especially in this last political year. Right. I don't want to get into politics, but there's so much divisiveness, so much. I've got friends, personal friends, like very close friends, won't talk to me because I supported, Donald Trump for president. Wow. It's insanity. I mean, I just think, we got to get our head together. And, thanks to guys like you and guys, you and guys like you, you're getting the message out that it shouldn't, this stuff shouldn't be. So I applaud you for what you do. I really admire you guys for your backgrounds, for what you've done. Marcus, I'm a big fan of yours. I'm very close to the Dietz family. In fact, I'll be in Colorado in Dave, when are we doing this thing? It's in July, right?
It's in July, with Mama D.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I'll be the keynote speaker at her event there in July. She asked me to come out in July. So I'm a big fan of yours. and all of the guys in special operations. I've got a bunch of very close friends, real close, that are in special operations. You know, we live in a world today where the conventional armies, the conventional enemy, as we knew it from Vietnam back, is no longer there. We live in a world where we're fighting chameleons, and our military focus had to change. And you guys, the special operations community, is that change. So I thank you for what you've done. I thank you for what you continue to do. And all your brothers and sisters out there, I thank them as well.
Thank you, Commissioner
Thank you so
Kerik.
much. It's an honor to
And it's,
finally meet
again,
you.
from the three of us, and from all of our listeners, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your life, and your experience with us. And God bless you and all the work you're doing in the future, sir. You know, we really appreciate it.
Yeah, we're thinking about you guys down here.
Thanks, guys. Be good.
Yep. Take care.
Stay safe.
Well, I'll tell you what, man. When you hear that dude talk, you can tell that he's been around the block, brother.
Oh, yeah. I imagine we didn't get into half the stuff that.
Oh, not even.
Yeah.
And I mean, I really, again, you got to just commend the guy. The guy had, I don't know, a terrorist attack in New York City. He
Yeah.
had 50 different interviews to do. He took
Yeah,
the
we're
time.
thinking about you guys in New York, too.
Yeah.
I mean, our New Yorkers, man, they take it on the chin for us.
All the
All the
time,
Man,
bro.
Before I got married, when I would go up to New York and visit, I would stay in the firehouses.
That's what you said,
Instead of the
yeah.
hotel.
Yeah.
And when you walk into a firehouse and it's not the awards for the what's that, but there's,
all the guys
there's
that
the
have
plaques
died,
that have died. You know, it looks like a platoon hut
Totally.
with all of our guys. You know how we do that?
Totally. Oh man, when I I did my rotation up in New York City with 18 Delta.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and it was
What,
awesome.
Bellevue.
No, every hospital.
Oh, great.
I was in every hospital.
Nice.
I worked in, I don't even know, like 10 different firehouses.
What a great, that was the best training.
Oh, bro, it was
You know?
awesome. But that's where I really came to know and love the New York mentality. And the number, I don't know, Wizard, did this number get crazy to you? The 7 months, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, them in doing that clean out, doing the investigations, finding those. I mean, what's that number do to your mind?
I think anybody that went and saw Ground Zero after the event understood the magnitude of it,
Right.
which was incredible.
Yeah, I got to go.
Therefore, the cleanup, yeah, I can see that being the case.
It's actually worth going if you take a trip up there.
Oh,
Now it's when it's complete, but I got a chance to
Obviously,
go up there.
now
and
it's
sit-
all cleaned up.
Right, and go down in there, and actually go up into. Man, New York's so great.
it's awesome.
They let me go in and sign the new tower and the wall before they put the walls up.
That's cool.
Like on one of the high floors, put some stuff in there. To remember, man,
That's super cool.
it
man.
was.
What I love when I went when the construction was underway, and then I went again when it was finished, and I went through the museum. And my favorite part of that was, favorite. It's tough, to balance. But again, we talk about, when tragedy happens, we're inspired to do more, to serve at a higher level. But I remember getting through the end of it, and at the end, seeing Rob's shirt up in there, man, and being all fired up,
Man, it's amazing how swift they, like we said, when they come together and they start working. I mean, 290. There's a highway out here down the road, but they've been working on that thing for almost 290 years, right? Towers fell and it came back up.
200.
They're still working on that road.
Southern 95 in South
Do you
Florida.
know why they built one tower?
No, do you know?
No, I don't know.
Oh,
Why'd they build one tower? I always thought they should have built three. Been like, oh, you knocked down two? Fuck you, here's three. Why'd they build one? I'm serious. I think they should have built three.
Okay, I don't know.
I
That's a
think
good
for
question.
structural purposes and size, because they wanted it to make the tallest building besides the Burj.
And
So I
the
think that's
surrounding area is.
Yeah, and you have limited capacity for real estate because they took, there's a huge area that became the memorial. So
Yeah, Ground Zero.
losing that, they only had real estate for the one. That makes
I think
more
a
sense.
third building would have been a cool memorial.
Oh, I do too.
Made a solid
Bit of a
rock.
hole in the ground.
I knocked this one down.
I don't know. That memorial is pretty epic, though. I love the water and all that. Anyway, so when you look at Bernie's career, and even his post-work with, when I had dinner with him, he was talking about working with Bremer in Iraq, right? And he was going over there, and I brought up a couple names of buddies that were running close protection for Bremer. He's like, yeah, I know that guy and all these other dudes. And he's like, yeah, I know him. And he goes, yeah, man, it was the Wild Wild West. And I go, did you ever imagine from being a cop on the beat to where you're in a foreign country helping with the war on terror? And he goes, David, never in my wildest dreams. I'm just a kid from New Jersey, man. And even to go
those
all
are the
the
guys
way,
that wind up being the greatest at their deal,
right?
And nothing against the line that people walk, and it's been laid for you. The Ivy Leagues can go into those positions. When you get the kid from the street rolled up in there with everybody else, it makes for a dynamic team.
And I think that's the point he was making, which is the main takeaway for our audience. And if you're listening to this, again, man, thank you for coming back. We appreciate it. Thank you for being a loyal listener to the Team Never Quit podcast. We could not do this without you guys. I know people say it, but hell, it's the truth with us. We value each and every single one of you. We love the comments you make on social media. We pay attention to them. The stories you write in and tell your never quit stories are amazing to us. Man, thank you so much. If this is your first time listening, boy, it's been a doozy to start out. Hopefully, we're grateful to have you. Go out and check out all the other shows, man. You will dig every one of them. They each have valuable lessons. And so for me, with Bernie, it was really to pivot off what you just said, Marcus. It's the sense that it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter how much you've been kicked in the teeth. Imagine knowing your mother was beaten to death by the time you were 9, right? No matter what you've seen or what you've gone through in your life, if you work hard, you're determined, you surround yourself with good people that are motivated that have great common sense. That's what I love about Bernie and what he was telling us today. If you have great common sense and you do the right things, man, you too can succeed. You can persevere. You can grind it out, and you can adhere to the never quit mindset, which will ultimately set you up for success in your life. All right.
Let's do a reader story.
All right. That's what I think we should do.
Cool.
This is from Officer Carey. Hi, guys. It's taken me a really long time to write this. I don't really consider my story a special one. I haven't survived cancer or gone to war and survived atrocities such as our wonderful veterans, but I have an incredible friend who believes I have a story to share. So maybe this will help my PTS healing. I leave the D off, by the way, because it's not a disorder, but a lifelong fight to live normal. So here goes my story. I grew up in a nice, quote, normal family, in a nice, quote, normal Midwestern town. My wonderful parents are still married and professionally successful. I was a good daughter growing up, got decent grades, played soccer, and stayed out of trouble. However, my senior year of high school, I was brutally sexually assaulted by my boyfriend, and at the time was dropped off at home bruised and beaten. I hid the incident from my parents and did not reveal it to them what happened until several years later when I started therapy. I managed to graduate from high school and go on to college, but it was definitely a struggle because all I wanted to do was isolate myself from the memories and flashbacks. I graduated from college with my bachelor's degree in law enforcement. I immediately tested and got onto the state police in the state I grew up in. I was even, quote, lucky enough to work in the area I grew up. I spent several years on the road in patrol, and 9 years ago I finally assigned to investigations. For the past 21 years, I've been protecting and serving the citizens of the state where I was born and raised. What no one knows or knew was, for all these years, after I finally fall asleep at night, I have severe nightmares. I relive the sexual assault. I see all the dead bodies I've investigated over the years. I see all the babies I couldn't save and all the victims I couldn't help. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love what I do. I wouldn't give up my worst day at work for my neighbor's best day. But I get up every morning to do a job that no one wants to do, and my brothers, sisters, and I get degraded for it. I have 7 years left before retirement, and I plan on giving back in some way to wounded warriors, both vets and first responders, in some way. 7 more years of never quitting. 7 more years of proving that I belong in this career as a female. 7 more years of providing 90% of police officers, proving that 90% of police officers are great officers. 7 more years of helping every person I possibly can. Thank you for reading my story. Carrie, listen, bravo Zulu to you. Thank you so much. What you are is a testament to not only women and police officers, but you're a testament to the human race. For going through what you've gone through, staying strong, working through it, and then continuing to serve others so that they might feel protected against the atrocities of the human condition, I commend you. It's an honor and a blessing to be able to read your story on with us, and we commend you across the board. Keep it up, and hopefully when your 7 years is up, you'll find something else that'll give you purpose in life where you can continue serving others.
I'm sorry that happened to you. But what it did is it unlocked that warrior in you. You became a police officer, and I mean, it stuck with you, and it's one of those deals where all the bad situations I've been in, I turned it into fuel, right? It's one of them deals where it lets me know that how far down I can go and what could happen, and then it provides that fuel that pushes you. Man, somebody asked me a while back if warriors were born or if they're made. And I think we're all born warriors, but it takes something in your life to peel back that one piece to turn it out. And you're not weaker for what happened to you. That mutt dude, he took advantage of something that he didn't, which he'll pay for later. I wish ladies would just take the reins off of us when guys like that. I mean, if they just good on all the ladies out there who are bringing all these idiots out who have been affecting them over the years, man, because you got guys like that. On the other end, you got guys like us. Man, we love y'all and want y'all to have the best life ever. When something like that happens, y'all just pisses us off to no end, man.
Man, I think about my 2 little girls and it scares the hell out of me, dude. That's why they're going to be badass.
Oh, man, yeah, exactly. Most daddies shield their daughters. Allie's going to be a ninja, dude. Teach her every pickup line, everything. She's going to be ready.
Well, listen, I just want to say thank you to, Bernie, for coming on. We know you were slammed today, buddy. Thank you so much for sharing your story and telling us about 9/11 and how critical that day was to stay in the fight, and for you and your life staying in the fight through all your highs and lows and to get your second chance in life. I want to thank Officer Carey for writing in. Thank you so much. I want to thank the fans, man. I want to thank all you out there that are listening on a regular basis. We could not or would not do this had it not been for all you guys and your stories that you're writing in, the never quit stories that you're writing in, that we're reading and we're posting up, man. They're just phenomenal. We can't thank you enough for opening up your souls to us and sharing that with us. It just means the world. I want to thank my 2 girls, my parents, my family, and most importantly, I want to thank you, Gents Wizard. Thank you, brother. Marcus, thank you, man. Couldn't do this without you guys. Love you, and thank God.
Mr. Kerik, thanks for coming on and doing everything that you do, man. You had a great life. It was an honor to have you on here. And Officer Carey, thank you for writing in and telling us that story. Here's the way I look at that. What happened to you back in the day, that woman that that happened to doesn't exist anymore, right? The woman that you are now is the one that exists. And that guy couldn't do that to you now. So to dwell on, yeah, we get those thoughts in our head from way back in the day, but basically you're worrying about a person that doesn't really even exist anymore. You need to worry about the person that you are now and all your accomplishments. That's what makes you strong. That's what makes you the warrior that you are, that you push through that. And those adversities that we hit at the bottom that had to transition us into who we are is something you shouldn't be ashamed of. All right, you shouldn't be ashamed of that. It was a horrible situation, and those kind of things should never happen to a woman. But it definitely transformed you into what you are now, which is an amazing, powerful woman with strength that coward couldn't even come near. So thank you for walking that line and standing behind that badge and doing all that you do, and keep fighting. 7 more years is going to go by like you couldn't even believe. So thank y'all. Thanks to everybody for bringing us back on here and letting us do. I can't believe we get to do this every day, right? Man, I'm out.
Out.
Never quit. Never quit.